Welcome to the Service Management Show from the team here at Code. I'm Gary Blower, IT Service Management Practice Lead. And this week, we're going to be talking about knowledge-centered support or knowledge-centered service. And I'll let my guest introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jack Graves. I'm the founder and CEO of Capable, and we're an Atlassian marketplace partner. And I'm here, to talk about knowledge-centered services.
Yeah, indeed. So, so Jack and I first sort of started chatting a couple of weeks ago, actually, at Atlassian Connect in London, which see previous episode of the Service Management Show to do with that. And we were talking, so Jack will explain a bit later on, but Jack's area of expertise really is around Atlassian Confluence and using it for knowledge and collaboration. So we were talking around this topic, actually, and I thought it was an interesting one to feature on the next Service Management podcast. If you're not familiar with knowledge-centered support or knowledge-centered service, as it's sometimes referred to, it's a framework or methodology that's been around for, I think, 15, 20 years now. It's not a new thing, but it's had more of a resurgence recently because of the importance of knowledge to things like large language models and AI. So there's much more of a focus on knowledge-centered support. So in layman's terms, just before we sort of get into like lessons learned and stuff, knowledge-centered support or knowledge-centered service is about if you're a support team and you're getting questions and you're providing responses, is don't just provide a response, provide knowledge. So you write the knowledge article and then you share the knowledge article. So if you get something novel, you write the knowledge article first and then you share it with the customer. And then next time the customer asks that question, you've already got that knowledge. Likewise, if you know, agents and service agents, things like that can do the same thing for more complex things. It's write it up first and then you've got it for next time. There is a whole framework you can look up, which we're not going down to detail now. But yeah, so Jack, obviously, you know, the stuff that you've been doing over the last few years, what would you say are the kind of the main benefits of using, you know, a knowledge base to provide that kind of self-service?
Yeah, I think in the past it's been, it speeds up resolution time as your other support staff can read what the other people have already solved. So I think we've all seen it where we've solved an issue in the past and then it comes up again and then we're back to square one and we have to re-understand what the problem is. So I think previously it was a bit of an afterthought to kind of document certain bugs and things that have happened in your support desks. But now, as you say, it's become more and more important as we're moving towards more AI agent models to solve it. So I think we all know, like, it's kind of what you put into AI will dictate what you get out of it, right? So if you put a load of rubbish into it, it's not going to be very effective. So really building that knowledge base has become more and more important for companies now as we look to kind of more efficiently handle our support.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with building knowledge bases for a long time, and I can remember, like I had way back, I worked for a bank, and I had a team that I took over there that looked after like all the dev and testing tools for the entire bank. One of the first things I did when I joined that team is I said to them that, okay, when you get something, you know, an inquiry or there's a problem or something like that, write the knowledge article first and then send the knowledge article to the customer. And initially, I got loads of pushback on that. It's like, oh, but it takes twice as long, and until I proved to them it takes the same amount of time, because often they were just writing an email. I'm like, well, don't write the email, write the knowledge article, and then just copy and paste that into the email. It's job done. You know, this is, like I said, something's not something that's new, but as you said, because of AI and the whole garbage in, garbage out, it's something that there's now actually a lot more focus on. What, you know, in your experience of, you know, particularly working with Confluence, where have you seen people really struggle to create the right sort of content and have content that can be shared and used in that way?
Yeah, I think you've got to recognize there's a difference between internal documentation and documentation you want to share with customers or AI agents. So obviously we've all got intellectual property and things that we don't necessarily want to share, like the technical details of how things work. So I think that's been an area I found with developers especially, or support staff. that are more technical is that they might write the article with the audience being internal, and then that can't be shared, right? You need to rewrite it for a more customer-centric approach. So I think understanding the difference between internal and external is a challenge I've seen people face in the past.
Agreed. Yeah, I've seen plenty where everything's mixed together.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, we can't share this with customers because it's, well, yeah, okay. The other thing, and I know this is something that you guys have done some work with at Capable, is one of the other challenges is if you're good at doing this and you're good at producing this content and you're providing this kind of self-service knowledge or internal, playbooks and run books and things like that, is keeping that stuff up to date and relevant. And if anything, weeding out the stuff that isn't. So again, what sort of challenges have you seen with customers that you've worked with around sort of just maintenance of knowledge, really?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big challenge. It reminds me of, I did a job when I was a consultant setting up something similar for a legal company, so in finance, and their documents had to be reviewed, say, every quarter or every half of the year because the law might change, right? And then they need to update it. So the lack of there's not many document management solutions in Confluence for finding those pages that are out of date. So I think you do need right now, you need to have a kind of plugin that provides the, I want to call it archiving or approval, which expires when the page is considered, maybe it needs re-reviewing or updating. But I think that's a huge problem. I think we've all been on kind of Confluence sites where most of the data is a year or two. The pages are not actually relevant anymore. They're not correct. And as we said earlier, like with AI, it's not going to make a distinction between that 2-year-old article and something that was last week. So yeah, I think keeping your content up to date, you can't think of Confluence like, I create a page, I forget about it. You do need to keep kind of looking in there and updating the content.
Agreed. Yeah, and obviously people can tell from my background, I'm a big ball gamer, and one of the things you get in the ball gaming world is this concept of living documents. This idea that you have like a living rule set that constantly evolves over time, and you get versions of those rules that are updated on a regular basis. Sometimes some games have got rules that go back 25 years. So and they're constantly being updated, and I think the same is true for knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You do need to keep it up to date.
Yeah, definitely.
But luckily you don't have to pay for, say, Dungeons and Dragons edition number 4 or whatever.
I forgot what it is now. I think it's like 7th or 8th now. I can't remember. But yeah, that's also a paid model. Yeah, you get that as well. Right, okay. So sort of coming back to the kind of topic of knowledge transport, and we've talked about AI quite a bit just there. I actually saw a talk on this recently at a service management event, and they were talking about the importance of knowledge-centered service coming back for all the reasons you just mentioned. And actually one of the things they raised was AI hallucinations, which I think is what you were talking about, isn't it? Where it's reading old stuff that's out of date. In the Atlassian world, obviously we've got Atlassian Intelligence and Rovo. I understand if you've done a little bit of research around this, haven't you, with Rovo, and look into how you can use that with knowledge? What have you played around with?
Yeah, I found Atlassian has 2 separate, more than 2. We'll probably get into virtual agents later, but they've currently got Atlassian Intelligence, which is the AI feature, and they've also got Rovo, which is the more kind of complete feature. So the big difference between those 2 is Atlassian Intelligence doesn't know anything about your company. It doesn't know anything about your Confluence knowledge base. It's basically like using ChatGPT, right? You ask it a question. In fact, it is ChatGPT. Whereas Rovo takes it a step further, and actually it can pull on all of your knowledge base. It can also look in, I think, now Google Drive and other places for data. So for us, like, I can ask it to write me a blog post about, say, Capable, and it will pull on all this data across our system and write it. So I think, especially for what we're talking about here, it's it's really good to kick off that Confluence page by saying like /AI, write how you solve this problem, and it will look through your knowledge base, figure out what it's got, and then actually give you a good starting point for that. So I think that's a really key thing to understand about the differences between Atlassian Intelligence and Rovo. Just to note that obviously Rovo is currently a separate charge on top of your Jira license, whereas I think Atlassian Intelligence is with premium plans.
It's premium and above, yeah. And as you mentioned, the key thing, in the Atlassian ecosystem is if you're using Jira Service Management, then Atlassian Intelligence is the engine behind the virtual agent, and that's where this knowledge center support really comes in, because you can actually, through like the customer portal or through Slack or Teams or whatever you're using, you can actually ask for something called Atlassian Answers. And exclusively, Atlassian Answers basically uses the Confluence knowledge base to provide the answer, doesn't it? So, so that's where you're looking to kind of optimize your knowledge to enable you to do that. But, just to reinforce, that's just one platform. And I've been speaking to other vendors as well. I was speaking to the guys at Fresh Service this week, or last week rather, and also guys from another product called Avalio. I think that's how I pronounced it correctly. They're like Polish ITSM vendor, and they're working through similar things, where they're bringing in these large language models to, particularly around knowledge and providing knowledge in lots of different ways, and they're coming up with the same issues in that, unless the knowledge is maintained, their AI doesn't do a great job. So
yeah, that reminds me, I think so recently Intercom actually lets you integrate with Confluence now, so you can actually use all your data from Confluence in Intercom on your website as well. Really cool.
Right. Okay. So let's cover some. Let's talk about what Capable does. So the reason we got chatting really was that you guys do things, or you enhance Confluence in a way that kind of lends itself to this kind of knowledge-centered support approach, doesn't it? So what's Capable been up to?
Yeah, so Capable is an all-in-one solution for Confluence. The idea is, in the past, you'd need, say, 10, 15 apps to do very simple things. We think that's kind of changing the landscape now, is moving towards companies want to streamline. They want to reduce the amount of platforms they have instead of having 50 different products to do the job. So what Capable does is it gives you everything you need to manage your knowledge in Confluence. So there's a few key things missing from Confluence right now, like we touched on earlier. The first one being management of like large knowledge bases. Managing thousands of pages in Confluence is not very easy. It doesn't have the concept of Jira where it's got like saved searches and like JQL, and you can share those with people. So like we said, finding outdated pages that need updating. There's currently not really a nice way of doing that at scale. So the first thing Capable does is provides a really advanced content management system, which lets you search pages and save them as filters, and then share that with the rest of your technical writer team, for example, to say, Gary, here's the pages you need to update today, for example. I think the second big thing that's missing is an approval and publishing system. So at the moment, Confluence can publish publicly using Confluence. You could also use Scroll Viewport or Refined Wiki to kind of publish a website. And the other one is Jira Service Desk, right? Someone's raising a ticket, they're typing something in, it finds articles that are related. But there's currently no way to kind of approve those pages to go in there. They're either in there or they're not. So I think if you're writing this stuff for public consumption, you really need to have an approval system. So what Capable Approvals feature does is allows you to write your page, put it through an approval process automatically, where it will ping, say, your manager to say you need to approve this page. That could be on email or Slack, so we get really quick feedback loop going. And the moment that page is approved, it'll be published and publicly available for your customers. So it provides that kind of missing link between writing the content and the review step that's missing, and actually having that being used by AI, being used by Service Desk or Scroll Viewport, for example. So that's just a subset of the features we have, but I think those are the most relevant for this discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think that, those two in particular, we highlighted earlier, is the fact that you need to keep everything up to date is key. And also that you don't want to publish, let's use that word, stuff that's, like you said, not ready or it's draft or been reviewed and all that kind of stuff. And I think those are essential ingredients really to any kind of successful knowledge center support or knowledge base that is going to be exposed to customers in some way. Now, the other thing I did want to talk about, and it probably is only partially relevant, but I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this stuff, and I absolutely love Markdown. Now, I appreciate it's kind of niche, but it has relevance because particularly if you're working with, say, knowledge center support where you've got a product that's been developed within the business, developers are generally very good with writing documentation in Markdown, things like GitHub and GitLab, and that support it natively anyway. And I got super excited when we were chatting when you said that it had Markdown support, and it does all these clever things like you can use Markdown to create diagrams and things. Do you want to just elaborate on that a bit, just for the nerds that are out there like me?
Yeah. So I think Confluence out the box, you can generally kind of write Markdown, but it doesn't have full support of it, and you can't do things like diagrams and things with it. And other solutions for Markdown don't have any kind of templating solution. So it's kind of like each time you add Markdown, it's a separate instance. It's kind of starting from scratch. So what Capable does is it lets you create a template library for Markdown, where you can create, say, how-to articles so that your team, your developers can just start writing Markdown. And as you said, you can just put in a diagram block and put in, say, flowcharts and other things to help understand what's going on. That in addition to, say, including Markdown from a URL, so from a GitHub repo, say, for example. And I think our secret sauce is the fact that we've got this live Markdown editor. So as you're typing in, it's giving you a live preview of images, diagrams, tables, everything there. And it just makes it easy, say, for your development team or your support team to write those articles, because I think we've all seen that ChatGPT's got this Canvas feature now, which makes it really easy to write Markdown. So you can use that to kind of give you, again, a good starting point for your doc pages. It's very seamless, very streamlined, and gives you that kind of template library to share as well.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Like I said, I'm a big fan of it. I remember, I think I told you this, that many years ago now, I did a really massive knowledge base for a scientific institute in the UK, quite a famous one. And they actually used Confluence for all the documentation for things like electron microscopes and various other things. So they're basically their manuals were effectively all digitized, and obviously being scientists and kind of nerdy, everything was done in Markdown. So it's kind of I just like anything that supports it basically. So yeah, it's kind of a thing that tickles me. Right, okay, so let's kind of wrap things up. So kind of closing thoughts. Do you have any kind of general tips for folk in terms of using any kind of knowledge base, but obviously specifically Confluence, because that's what you guys work with? If you're looking to provide a kind of knowledge base, what are the top tips?
I think the first one would be consistency. So, if you're going to do how-to articles or guides or references, you should really have templates for those so that it's all consistent across the knowledge base. So if you've got 6, 7, 8 support agents, you don't want each of them to be writing a different style of article, really. So that's the first one I'd say, is consistency is king, right? I also think organizing those spaces. So in Confluence, as you know, spaces are the logical kind of container for all your pages. So if you're going to have draft content or internal content and external content, don't put them in the same space. This is especially important with Jira Service Desk, where you kind of give it a space to index. I mean, that said, you can use labels to do it, but I suggest not doing that, because now you're just not sure which space is internal and which one's external. So I think the second point is logical separation of internal and external pieces. I think the third one would probably be, you really need to have that review process for this content as well. Especially if you don't want someone to unilaterally be able to publish something publicly. That could cause, say, some reputational damage if there's something inappropriate in there, or just the wrong tone. So I think that's the next one, sort of having a rigid approval process that people can't bypass as well.
Very good. Any more? That's it? That's those three? I don't think there are too many more.
No, I don't think so. I think they're the top three, I think.
Yeah, top three, yeah. And I think on your point on labels, I think labels are really important in Confluence, but they're mainly important from a kind of search and linking of content together, rather than, as you said, trying to use labels to segregate. Yeah, it's just horrible. I think it's just easy, like you said, just to do it in a much more controlled way where you can't accidentally leak information. I think that's kind of critical of these things. Right. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap things up there. So first of all, Jack, I mean, where can people find out more about Capable, or where can they find out more about yourself and what you're up to?
Yeah. So if you want to check out Capable, go to gocapable.com, and you can see articles on how you can use our app to solve different problems you've got, including knowledge-centered service. We've actually got a new solution page specifically for this, so you can take a look through how it can help your business. And other than that, just check us out on LinkedIn as well. Give us a follow, and might learn some things.
Brilliant. Right. And all it is me to do really is to ask the viewer and the listener to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues if you find the Service Management Show's topics interesting. Do like and subscribe and all those other good things, and do leave us comments, because we do read all the comments and get back to you on either LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you've left the comment. So do reach to thank Jack for joining me this month.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
No problem. And we'll be back next month with another Service Management Show, so do hope you'll join us then.